This is Sergeant Ollie reporting from the cultural front lines. You're tuned in to Poets at War, where art, theology, philosophy, and fun unite in the battle for hearts and minds. As we do each mission, we commence with direct field transmissions from our officers embedded deep in enemy territory. Our sole intelligence dispatch tonight comes from our Bard-in-Chief General Joshua David Ling, delivering a crucial briefing on introducing the Guardians of Atlanta. Following this strategic overview, all personnel will advance to our primary offensive, Operation Brood Tales. Direct literature from our members of the Brood themselves. Today's mission log features Cyclone Jones, The Long Summer, transmitted under fire by Joshua David Ling from the thick of the battle. The front lines await your attention, soldiers, and now, reports from the front on Poets at War. This is another Poets at War General Report. And here's your General, Joshua David Ling.
Hello, friends and folks. Good to see you, good to hear from you, etc., etc. This is the General's Report. And this episode of Poets at War that's coming out on Friday, for those of you who are listening then, I need to do this a little bit more as an intro to Poets at War than I normally would. Normally, General's Report's just supposed to be a report from the front. But we have something very special for you today on Poets at War. And if you're just watching the General's Report, look at Poets at War. Yeah. The stars aligned in such a way that everyone was too busy to do a full episode of Poets at War this week, but I did have something ready to go in the can that's been, it really kind of came about right at the time, right at the perfect time, and it's not just a canned thing, I shouldn't say that. It is the first full episode of Guardians of Atlanta, in the new format that I've been doing here on the Joshua David Ling channel, and presented to you for the first time on the Brood channel. This will also be the first inaugural Brood Tales. And if you're a member of the Brood and want some of your stories shared here, I can read them, you can read them, we can share them however you want, and they can be a regular part of Poets at War. For those of you who listen in the Brood, I would love to share your stories. Short stories, snippets of stuff, whatever you've got that you really want shared, would love to get it up here. So, yeah, the first episode of Guardians of Atlanta, let me just get into Guardians a little bit. Guardians originally started long time ago, actually 20 years ago this year, right around this time, right around summer, spring 2005, and I wanted to create a superhero group. I was really into Teen Titans at the time, and one of the main things I knew I wanted was a leader who was a knight, but a futuristic knight, someone who had a lot of cool functionality beyond just like normal knighthood. Maybe started as sort of like a Renaissance-y sort of, reenactor sort of thing, but became a real bona fide superhero. That was the original idea. And then it changed, it morphed, and the second one that I created was Amira, who you'll get to at some point. She also has an interesting set of powers, but she's a copier. She copies powers, and her original name was Copycat, but that changed. And then, further building out the team, I thought of Bobby. That was his original name. He was originally just kind of a weird, weird magician kids, you know how they are, but I've sort of jazzed him up, made him a carnival trickster later on. And then there was a fourth, and she would ultimately be the first when I really started writing this story in earnest instead of just playing around with ideas. And her name originally was Alexandria. Interesting, I know. And she was going to be a cowgirl that her family farm First of all, she's a cowgirl that controls the weather. That was always the case. But then she became a character who was sort of more redneck. She's from Kansas originally. Out in the middle of nowhere, and aliens attack her family farm, and she has to use her powers in a comedic way to stop them. I may end up writing that version of her at some point, just for the fun of it, because it's such a silly, ridiculous idea. It feels like a Cartoon Network cartoon, to be honest with you. But yeah, the thing that really changed that, and the thing that really began Guardians of Atlanta in earnest, and really fueled my foray into epic poetry, was I was walking home about 3 miles from work one day, and I was walking home because nobody could get me in a reasonable amount of time. And so it's a short enough walk. It's doable and everything. So I walked home, and on my way home, crossing over county line from Fulton County into Forsyth County, and just generally moving, through various plots of land, across next to a golf course, next to a liquor store, next to this, next to that, so many different things. The grass changed like 6 times, like the species of grass, and almost none of them were native to what I remember having growing up in my yard and in adjacent yards and things like that. And I just kind of started getting mad about, it was hot. I was already mad about that, but I was also mad just about no one cared enough to try to be true to the place. They were trying to bend the place to what they saw and what they thought the land should be. Meanwhile, the trees are growing up tall and they're overshadowing everything anyone's doing. It was just this interesting back and forth. There was construction going, and I had all the same feelings that Cirrus felt during Home is Where the Heart Remains, which you'll be hearing shortly. I just wanted to kind of get into that a little bit, and it made me angry to the point where I wanted to rap about it. And I created the initial rap album with it, which if you look hard enough, you can find it. And yeah, so this story's been with me for quite some time. That part of the story came about in, I want to say 2016, somewhere around there. And I'm really looking forward to sharing it with you. I hope I didn't ramble on too much. We're gonna go ahead and get into it. And if you are just watching the General's Report, I'll link the Poets at War episode down in the bottom so you can actually hear the story. But thank you all for being part of Poets at War, part of the Brood. And I hope you enjoy this. I hope that it gets you jazzed for what's to come. We have a lot to talk about in the coming months, and a lot to do work-wise.
You're listening to Operation Brood Tales. Stories from all over the broad expanse of our Brood Empire. Tales to encourage, to edify, and to win the hearts and minds of the world. Bringing everyone stories for their hearts for generations to come. And now, Operation Brood Tales on Poets at War.
Guardians of Atlanta, Season 1, The Legend of Stone Mountain, Episode 1, Cyclone Jones, The Long Summer, by Joshua David Ling.
At standing peach trees edge we stand, where asphalt meets the fertile land. We're caught between two worlds at war, but we can fight to build something more. We'll raise a city on this hill, beat back the inevitable darkness still. Roll back the shadows, let the light shine through, a vision of the old made new.
Read Jones was a farmer just north of Atlanta. His wife laid sick in bed. Just picture it, can't you? A baby in her womb, a storm raging outside. The lightning locked them in. The storm poured from the skies. The wind and rain battered their tiny Georgia town. The hails and gales tore power lines down. The back window had been knocked out by flying debris, and there was no hope that either of them could see. Emily, Reed's wife, her complexion was shoddy. Nausea, pain, and cold racked all of her body. She moaned and cried and prayed that it was just the flu, but Reed Jones had no clue what to do. He set a candle on the nightstand and tucked in his ailing wife and slammed his knees down to the floor to beg God for her life.
Please, Lord, please, God, save my wife and child.
The wind started blowing, and there came something wild. The wind had calmed, the rain had stopped, but what came was a storm indeed. Light crinkled at the edges of the walls, golden as ripening wheat. And fading in, as the room became light, was a figure about 8 feet tall. His stature not only dwarfed the Joneses, but seemed to stretch their walls. He wore a tan leather duster with black pants, shirt, and boots beneath. The duster looked dirty and worn, and tassels hung from the sleeves. On top of his head was a black cowboy hat, obscuring his eyes and nose. A smirk on his lips, surrounded by a goatee, stood frozen in a wry pose. Before the figure opened that mouth, Reed Jones stared blankly and knew he was in the presence of an angel, and there was nothing he could do.
Reed Jones, good and faithful servant, your wife will be saved from death's dark current. Your daughter is well, but she'll be born with power. All weather before her eyes will cower. And with God's help, she will withstand great adversity. She will lose everything, but she will learn this homily. If Christ is with us, who can be against us? Your daughter, Reed Jones, will stand for justice.
And just like that, the angel was gone. Before Reed could say a word, he jumped back up to his precious wife. By love and worry, he was spurred. But his wife lay there, asleep and warm, her color now rosy red, and her breathing was as calm and relaxed as the baby that laid within her in that bed. Reed Jones cried with utter relief as the sky above turned red too, praising God Almighty in heaven, for there was nothing he could do. A few weeks after that, Emily birthed from brittle bones a daughter with brown hair, and they named her Cirrus Jones. "5 years later in Alpharetta, the Joneses' home in town, at Canaan Baptist Church, Sunday school had come in from the playground. It was time for the parents to come and pick up all of their young kids. Reed rolled in to pick up Cirrus and was met with a hug and a kiss. But then her spastic little girl demeanor turned sour in a flash. Her chin jutted out in a frown, and into a complaint she did splash.
Can you believe it, Daddy?
5-year-old Cirrus whined.
They said our angel's not in the Bible, but I told them you saw him shine.
Reed sighed and thought about how to explain why they couldn't just go spreading that tale. But any way he thought to explain it turned out to be a big fat fail.
And Ezekiel's even a book in the Bible. Yes, but that one was a prophet. And I told you the angel didn't tell me his name. Cirrus, you should probably drop it. Just because we call him that, because I have a feeling that's his name, doesn't mean you should go telling everyone about it. They'll think it's just a game. Just because I know what I saw doesn't mean it makes sense. and it doesn't matter if other people believe it. You don't have to be so intense."
Cirrus's tiny mind was going a mile a minute. She suddenly reached up and touched her hair and felt no headband in it. Little Cirrus, full of fright, screamed and cried and moaned,
"Daddy, it's my favorite headband. We just can't go home."
"Cirrus, you've lost these things before. They always turn up again." Just then, a little head peeked round the Sunday school doorway's bend. The little boy hunched his back, and his mom behind him said,
"I think Connor has something for you, Cirrus, and he won't ever take it again."
The little boy inched his way toward the prissy girl. He held out the missing headband. Cirrus took it and twirled.
"Yeah!"
she exclaimed as she spun around.
"But why'd you take it, Connor? Tell me now." "You were playing with all the kids, and I just felt left out. I was too scared to talk to you, so I took your headband out. All you had to do was ask if I would be your friend."
Connor asked that very day, and their friendship had no end. The old blue-black door swung open into the Joneses' farmhouse. Cirrus looked into the kitchen. There was no one about. Lightning flashed and thunder roared as her soaked and shivering form stepped inside and dripped to the floor, hoping to get warm.
"Cirrus, is that you?"
came a voice from the other room.
"Is that you, darling?"
he said. A dirty-looking man walked in with a Braves cap on his head. He wore a red flannel shirt with blue overalls on top, and the car part he'd been carrying he quickly did drop, for the sight of his daughter crying was alarming indeed. He hugged his crying tween-age girl as they slipped down to their knees.
"Cirrus, what's the matter? I thought you were at Connor's game."
At the game's mention, the weather grew less tame. As Cirrus coughed and spluttered, the rain grew more intense. Reed took her aside into the living room and quietly let her vent. Once she had released the bulk of her inner turmoil, she looked up at her dad, and anger at herself roiled.
"Dad, I ruined the game. I was sitting in the dugout next to Connor like Coach McFarland lets me, and I tried."
She began to pout.
"It was stupid, but I tried to hold his hand. And as soon as I did, he had to go get ready to bat, and—"
Cirrus closed her eyelids.
"I couldn't help it. I started crying."
Cirrus lost it again. Reed stroked his daughter's hair.
"They lost the game when it was called due to weather. They were in the ninth down by 4, but they had the bases loaded and Connor on deck."
Now Reed saw what she was crying for.
"And the rain was your fault, Cirrus?" "Are you kidding? Of course it was."
Reed took a moment to process it all, and they relaxed during that pause.
"I'm sorry, Cirrus, but you can't let this keep you from living your life. I've told you before and I'll tell you again. You don't have to keep secrets and lie. You can tell Connor about your gift if you want." "There's no way he'd believe me, Daddy."
That was always her response.
"Why did God give me this gift? Why did he send that stupid angel to you?"
Reed saw the pain in his daughter's face, but even then he knew he had to balance his firmness and comfort in his reply.
"God made you the way he made you. He gave you control over the sky, and it won't do nothing but hurt you to be cursing his messenger on high. I know things are hard for you, harder than most girls, in fact. But it will get better, Cirrus. God's angel promised us that."
Cirrus sighed and curled up into her daddy's arms, and the raindrops lightened into a sprinkle as they stayed safe and warm inside their beautiful farmhouse. And there was no more need for talk, just the tapping of the rain and the ticking of the clock. The boat shifted, creaked, and bobbed in the wind on Lake Lanier, but Connor and Cirrus both enjoyed it. They didn't have any fear. Connor loved to sit and fish, and Cirrus loved the spray, and they loved to be with one another on any given day. The baseball game was 2 years ago. Cirrus was now 15. She felt much more confident in herself, and she was bursting at the seams to tell Connor her one secret. Her best friend had to know, and she figured now was the best time as any. She took deep breaths as they rowed. The spot they settled on the lake was hidden among the trees, a great spot for catching catfish, but they were tossed about by the breeze. It wasn't a very great day to fish, but they enjoyed it anyway. The overcast sky and high winds made their canoe rock and sway.
Connor, Cirrus began to speak, I have something to tell you.
Fish ain't biting anyway. Go ahead, Si, what's new?
It's a story about when I was born that only me and my parents know, but it's time I told my best friend about Zeke's visit years ago.
Zeke? Connor said with a laugh. That boy on the wrestling team?
No, stupid, not him! My guardian angel!
She screamed. What? Connor said with amazement and turned his full attention to her.
My parents were both in the farmhouse, and Mama was sick and sore. Daddy prayed and asked God to save her and to have mercy and save me. Then an angel appeared to my dad, and the angel told him about me. He said I would control the weather as far as I can see, and that I would know love and loss, but through it I would see.
Whoa, that's a good one, Cirrus. Your stories have been getting good.
It's not a story, it really happened.
Cirrus's anger soared.
When I control the weather, it's like my body quakes. I feel a release when I let the rain go, and then I feel...
Tap the brakes. Cirrus, I really want to believe you, but I just heard you say this. Your guardian angel made you make it rain, and somehow it feels like bliss? It sounds like you're just using the bathroom.
The feeling is very close.
Connor couldn't help but laugh, and Cirrus said,
This ain't a joke!
Suddenly, a lightning bolt shattered the clouds and struck a tree on the bank. Connor stared at the burning tree, and his mind went completely blank.
Now do you believe me, Connor?
Yes, Cirrus, I do. And that is the tale of how Cirrus Jones told Connor Murdoch of her powers in that canoe. He had many questions still to ask, but Cirrus was elated to find it didn't change their friendship one bit, or the path of Connor's mind. If anything, they grew closer once Cirrus took the step to lay her soul before her soulmate and trust God for the rest. Fast forward on through time to several years later. Cirrus was in college at UGA, and celebration was in the air. The night before the last day of school, Cirrus had a party invite. She would meet her friend Cindy at a club called Top Dog, and they would party into the night. Cirrus didn't do clubs very often, but Cindy had been close to her, at least in recent weeks, but she still wasn't sure. Regardless, she got dressed to the nines and put on her best leather boots, and as she walked into that club called Top Dog, she felt her senses uproot. The music was so very loud, her heart muscles struggled to beat. She couldn't see Cindy anywhere, the darkness was so complete. Then, as her ears adjusted to the sounds, she heard a million cuss words. She quickly decided that this place was simply for the birds. A drunken man grabbed her by the arm and said to her, "Let's dance!" Cirrus angrily wrenched her arm away, and the man fell in a drunken trance. She left Top Dog as quickly as she came, and a tear rolled down her cheek. The fear that she had of being misplaced had finally reached its peak. The hope of summer hovered over her, then the thought of returning home to a place where she was understood, where she'd never be alone. Fast forward, about 12 hours later, Cirrus was in class zoning out with a blank stare. Summer break, just a few minutes away, she stared at that clock for what seemed like days. And even in that crazy little town of Athens, the pressure was too much on a girl who raised chickens. horses, cows, and crops, that bell rang, and there were no more stops. The quicker she'd get there, the quicker she'd be back among the pine, creeks, and peach trees. No matter what happened, no matter what changed, one thing never did. His home is where the heart remains. And as she went home, she saw her whole world changing. Every time she stepped out, new construction was ablaze, and it was amazing. All the shops and malls and offices and streets.
Man, they got gall.
Cirrus thought every time her mind would drift. When the winds of progress would shift, they'd leave a bigger mess than ever before. The South been dying slowly since the Civil War. But the quicker she'd get there, the quicker she'd be back among the pine, creeks, and peach trees. No matter what happened, no matter what changed, one thing never did, 'cause home is where the heart remains. And even though the borders of the Joneses' home were surrounded by the aforementioned stores and chrome, their 20 acres of land were glorious. Cirrus ran inside, feeling victorious. The minute she opened the door to her home, she knew that she was no longer alone. All of everything she'd been feeling melted away in the arms of her parents. The night she'd stay. Country roads take her home to a place where she belongs. Alpharetta, that's her hometown. Take her home, country roads. Dinner time came for the happy Jones family. They sat down to enjoy their meal, but something cold still lingered in the air, and all three of them could feel the relentless spirit now climbing their steps, a monotonous drone in his heart. And soon that drone would collide with their happiness, and trouble truly start. Progress moves can't be stopped. Trees cut down and then they're chopped. Progress will never be dropped till this whole culture is swapped. During dinner time with the Jones, a knock came to the door and everyone froze. Father Reed went to the door to open. On the other side was a man who was hoping to take their farm, take their land, and turn it into a strip mall. He reached out to shake Reed's hand, but he wasn't getting no howdy, y'all. In fact, he wasn't even getting a no, sir. But against this man, nothing would deter. My name is Philip Keller.
Don't worry, Phil, I know you. You've been sending your vultures off and on since 2002.
Well, you'll be happy to know the offer tripled in price.
It doesn't matter, now get off our porch.
Gee, aren't you nice?
I'm telling you, you're sitting on a gold mine. This land is a big budget deal. Didn't you hear me? I said get gone. You should know the drill.
Reed closed the door sharply, and Philip Keller smiled, his plans for their land going longer than miles. He took one more glance at their yard and said, "Looks like Mr. Nice Guy is finally dead." Reed Jones had said no. There was nothing he could do. He slammed the door on his Corvette and stewed. But still Philip plotted. But still Philip planned to one day put an end to this southern strand. He then drove off, but inside Reed was asked by his wife Emily,
"Who was it that passed by our door during dinner?"
She happily chimed.
"Philip Keller himself. Guess what he wanted this time?" "Is he still coming around?"
Cirrus asked in dismay.
"Him and his cronies come by every day. At least that's how it feels, most of the time." "That's enough about that then. Would y'all like some wine?"
And as the Joneses enjoyed their dinner, and Philip Keller drove away, the drone in Philip Keller's heart droned louder with wild decay.
Progress moves can't be stopped. Trees cut down, and then they're chopped. Progress will never be dropped till this whole culture is swapped. As Philip Keller's Corvette headed back to 400, and the Joneses began dinner and sat there and wondered why Philip Keller wanted their land so badly, a different sports car pulled up, and Cirrus squealed gladly. The black Trans Am, with so much love and work put inside it, ferried her favorite person in the world. Oh man, was she excited.
I'm sorry, Mom and Dad. I forgot. Connor wanted to take me out. No problem, sweetie. See you soon. Thanks,
Cirrus said with a shout. She ran out without a single doubt. This is what love songs are really singing about. There's never any hate and never any doubt. This is the person that you're meant for. It's not by chance. It's nothing but a small town romance. Years ago, when Cirrus was young, a boy came to her Sunday school class. He stole her headband to get her attention. He said, "Sorry," and they became friends fast. Love stories like this only come in small towns where people don't leave each other. They stick around. And even one day their parents knew they'd find both of them married. They were that entwined. This is what love songs really mean at the heart. It begins the second you meet, right from the very start. You're best friends forever, even at first glance. It's nothing but a small town romance. So that night, when Connor came in his Trans Am, he picked up Cirrus and drove somewhere grand. He planned on taking her to Stone Mountain, but a gas leak kept all that from happening. So instead, he drove to a much smaller place, a little neighborhood that survived by God's grace, a cul-de-sac on top of a large mound, and you could see all of Atlanta from on top looking down. They had a picnic right there with fried chicken and sweet tea, but then all of a sudden Connor said, "Cirrus, will you marry me?" Even down the road, when you're talking about forever, you really can't remember a time you were never together. So it's really not that hard to maintain that stance. It's nothing but a small town romance. When they arrived back, the stars shined brightly, unconcealed. They stared through the black at something gleaming in the nearby field. Cirrus went to pick it up, but it floated up off the ground. Connor gave a shout, and Cirrus ran at the sound. The chase began. They ran and ran, but Cirrus fell and gave a yell. Connor turned back and jumped in the way, but that shiny machine took his life away. With one electric shock, his heart began to slow to a stop. Cirrus held him for a few, and he told her, "I love you." Connor slipped away, and a storm came that day. But from Cirrus's eyes alone came thunder's loud groans, and the raindrops wailed and bemoaned Cirrus Jones, who was all alone. This may seem quick, but I tell it that way to make you feel what Cirrus felt that day. The adversity the angel had promised of her was beginning, all in a blur. And that's how life tends to go. It doesn't dawdle. It's not slow. Make sure you're ready, like Connor was. That's the end of this poem. And now, we pause. This has been Guardians of Atlanta,
Written, produced, and performed by Joshua David Ling. To continue this story, please visit joshuadavidling.com/Guardians of Atlanta. Stay tuned for a preview of the next episode. When ancient hymns tell tales of old, of knights whose hearts were brave and bold, she told me to take him to the land of the free, to the knights here in Atlanta, to the men who stand high. She told me to raise him as a knight of Adonai. From London streets across the sea to Aletheia Church in the south, a boy's destiny with the Knights of Adonai will begin to see some doubt. What we're doing serves purpose, of that there is no doubt. But I think Master Fenris's appeal was about the fact that our purpose is only to serve God. What are your plans, Master Malachi Dodd? When masters plot what honor can't stand, and betrayal's web is spun. What is wrong with you? You better explain yourself for that little stunt. Will Brotherhood survive this blight? In Crusader, the White Knight.
For more episodes of Poets at War, please visit joshuadavidling.com or check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcast transmissions. This is Sergeant Ollie, signing out.
God of songs said